Hey, I'm back with this series on the emotions that come with breast cancer. And on my last video, I talked about grief and loss, and I'm just entering that journey, and by no means do I have a good handle on it, even for myself. And I know we're all very unique in terms of the amount of grief and loss we feel with regard to the loss of a limb or a breast. Whatever we have lost, it's a part of our identity for sure. And we experience different levels of grief over that. But when I was thinking about the emotions involved in my journey thus far, again, I'm very early in my journey, I was thinking there's an even more significant emotion and feeling that I have experienced over the last couple of months and really years, that has more to do with fear. And I'm not even talking about the fear of recurrence, which is the main fear I think is associated with any cancer diagnosis and is a hugely, hugely significant fear. I haven't entered into the realm of fear of recurrence too much yet. I've just started to learn about recurrence, and so I feel like that's not even a doorway that I've walked through, being that I've only had my diagnosis for a little over a month. But I have had a lot of fears with regard to pissing off doctors, and I want to talk about that today. I have medical anxiety already just because I've had a few things in my history that were traumatic, and I also have a lot of history around authority figures and men, especially in authority over me, because I have a history of abuse within a church setting where men are hugely powerful, at least in the tradition that I was in at the time of my abuse. And so that really kind of informs my story. And of course, men in medical settings are very much the same as men in religious settings. They are treated as God or God's representative. And in many cases, women in medical settings are also highly, highly authoritarian. And I think that's changing. We are definitely moving, the pendulum is moving towards more personalized and choice-centered medicine. So that's good. But there still is that very strong association of powerlessness, for me at least, when I walk into a medical setting. And that is only enhanced when it comes to limited time and the idea of surgery. Limited time because I always have plenty of questions and there is never enough time to address them all. And surgery with regard to aesthetics especially, so in the case of breast cancer especially, the surgery is so significant because we are going to be looking in the mirror every day at what used to be there. And it really is a lot like having an amputation. So it's a lot like having a finger, an arm, a hand, a foot, a leg taken off. When you're talking about your breast as a woman, it is so central to your identity, for good or bad or in between. All of us have varying levels of either embracing or resenting our breasts as well because of what they represent to the opposite sex or gender. So there's that as well. It's just so emotionally packed. But what I learned in my journey, which I was not expecting, was that there are so many different kinds of choices and preferences that different women can and do have with regard to breast augmentation or rebuilding or the plastic surgery part of breast cancer surgery. So there's the option of getting implants, and so there's that whole end of it, which I think is the norm probably still. It's probably the most popular option is to get breast reconstruction with implants either above or below your pectoral muscle, made out of silicone or saline. That's the common material. But for the rest of us, either who don't have enough fat on our body or excess skin on our body to do transplants to make up that excess, or don't like having foreign objects in our body, haven't done well with foreign objects in our body, or just don't want to go through all those surgeries that it takes to reshape and rebuild a breast. There are still lots of options, apparently, which I did not know. And I don't think most women know this. And it takes a lot of conversation, and thankfully most plastic surgeons have more time to give than most breast surgeons or medical surgeons. And so you do get a little bit more time with your plastic surgeon to talk about options and aesthetics. I didn't get enough, and I didn't get an education in that process. And I don't think it's normative to get an education. You have to really direct your own education, educate yourself, do your own research. And when it comes to aesthetics, I am not very research driven. I am very research driven when it comes to medical issues, but not when it comes to augmentation or plastic surgery. Aesthetics just weren't on my radar. And so I didn't realize the things that I needed to look into until it was too late, really, I think. And I told this story a little bit in some of my earlier videos, but the story of my plastic aesthetic breast reconstruction, I guess it's called reconstruction, even when you don't have anything added or put into it. Because anytime a plastic surgeon is involved, you're reconstructing something, you're doing something with your skin, and you're trying to do it in a way that is aesthetically pleasing. So I made some assumptions. I assumed that flat meant flat, and there was no other option. There was just one definition, and flat was flat. But what I didn't realize is that my plastic surgeon, of course, now that I look back in hindsight, of course, has a long history of making breasts look round and not flat. And she is biased in the sense that she is motivated to make most of the women she works with, which are not cancer patients probably, but are doing augmentation just for the sake of augmentation, look more round. Less droopy, less flat, more perfectly round. And that's not what I was looking for. And she assumed it was. And I did not assert myself at many opportunities when I could have and should have in order to ensure that she understood that fully. I did assert myself a little bit. I did tell her I wanted a flat closure. I even explained to her the reason behind my desire for a flat closure. I told her I wanted it flat because I wanted not a 3D nipple tattoo, but a decorative tattoo on my chest wall. And I wanted it to be flat and not wrinkly, not bumpy, because I wanted that tattoo to be able to be uniform and flat, which I thought made sense. And after my first surgery, my main mastectomy surgery, I was pretty unhappy with the number of wrinkles in my breast area. And I came to understand that she was trying to achieve the maximum cleavage effect and allow there to be no concavity, so a little bit of convexness, which I appreciated. I thought you could do convexness and flatness at the same time, and that's what I was expecting. But what I got was a lot of wrinkles in the seams, and I told her that was not what I wanted, and so I had a chance for a revision because I had margins that were not clear. So I just happened to have the chance for a second surgery. And the second surgery, she corrected the wrinkles, but she left this huge lump of skin that was folded over in the middle of my chest. And I talked about this in my last couple of videos. And that was really shocking and surprising, considering that I explained to her that I wanted a flat chest. And so now that I look back, of course, I would want to have advocated more for myself and taken more of her time to explain my desires. But at the same time, I feel like I did that to some extent, and I didn't feel heard or acknowledged. And what I've learned is that this is not just me. This is not a one-time incident. This is pretty normative across probably the globe, but at least across the US. And there's a movement that addresses it, and it's called aesthetic flat closure, and it's been something that has been fought for in medical terminology for years, I guess, because many, many surgeons are making the assumption that we as women who want the flat closure are foolish and will regret it someday. And so there's a lot of presumption on the part of medical practitioners, to the point where even women who have been extremely clear and extremely assertive are being ignored and having their bodies altered and formed in shapes and sizes in ways that they have not consented to. In fact, that they have directly opposed. And this just makes me so sad and so grieved. And it just feeds the wave of fear that I feel, that I experience when I am in a room with a surgeon who has that kind of power. Number one, I don't want to irritate them because they are going to have a knife at my skin. You know, it's going to happen the next time they see me. They're going to be slicing my skin. And that is really, really intimidating. Just no matter how you rationalize it, it is a human visceral fear that another human is going to be cutting your body. You're meant to be afraid of that person, I think. It's natural. And yet, that person may not be very good at listening. And I'm not sure how we can vet our surgeons better to help understand how well they listen to us. I don't think there's any directory. Maybe there is, or maybe it's being formed as we speak. But I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that medical fear is something that is absolutely legitimate. And it's really tiring to look for new and preferred and optimal medical professionals when you've met a couple already and you're thinking maybe I won't find one, which has definitely been the case in my story. I got 3 opinions from surgeons, and I settled for the best of the 3 medical surgeons, breast surgeons. I only was allowed one option because I chose that breast surgeon. I was only allowed her plastic surgeon, who came on after the fact. So after I chose my medical surgeon, I had one choice, and that was the one that she works with in terms of the plastic surgeon. And so when you have already kind of gone through this kind of ruling out process with your main surgeon, and then you meet your plastic surgeon and you realize that they're not a good listener, or maybe they don't have a lot in common with you or share your values in terms of breast shape or size. It's a little too late then, at least it was in my case. So I just want to say, tomorrow I'm going to see my plastic surgeon probably for the last time, because in my next mastectomy, I will not be going back to her. She did not do what I asked her to do. And even though I will not be seeing her after tomorrow, I'm still afraid to tell her that she really blew it and didn't listen to me and didn't give me the outcome that I desired. I should tell her that. I'm just not even sure that I'll be able to. Because I am intimidated by her, because I think that there might be some way in which she can influence my journey that I'm not aware of by making some notes somewhere or talking to someone who might make notes somewhere in my record. There is so much legitimate fear, not to mention my own just personal history with trauma and authority figures, that I just don't even know that I can rise to the occasion and educate her about her failing me and her need to do better for other women. And I really feel the need to do so, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to. And that's the fear that I'm talking about. Certainly before surgery, I would not have been able to, because if I irritated her, which I did by asking too many questions, or pissed her off by challenging her expertise or authority or her assumptions, I was very much afraid that she would somehow, without even meaning to, be frustrated in my surgery, and there would be a poor outcome of my surgery because of her frustration with me as a person. And this is a problem I can't really even solve. Like, I'm not even sure what the solution is, except for better education, of surgeons, a better medical system that allows you more time to ask questions, encourages you to ask questions, encourages surgeons to do education so that you have time to talk about the different options like aesthetic flat closure. There needs to be a lot more education. There needs to be a lot more time. And that's just the basic starting point for a better outcome and less fear, I think. This is not a pretty story. I don't have any encouraging words to share. It's really sad and disappointing, and I think we have a pretty good medical system compared to a lot of medical systems in the world. All of them are broken. All of them are suboptimal. The state-driven medical systems like they have in Canada and in the UK are great because they're free, but they're also not allowing for basic things like MRIs or even a prophylactic mastectomy like the one that I'm going to be having. So they're limited in their weaknesses and strengths. And then the US, I think, one of our main weaknesses is the lack of time that we're allowed to spend with our doctors, especially our surgeons. This is really important stuff. They are altering our bodies. And thankfully, I'm not as vain about my breasts as some women are. And I can live with my current outcome if I need to. And thankfully, I'm having another mastectomy, so I may not need to. I may get another chance for plastic surgery on my first breast. But this history of being misunderstood and presumed upon just builds that tendency toward fear. And I just really want to fight against it by talking about it and speaking out about it. There are others who have gone before me who are speaking out about it and who have whole organizations that are built around advocacy for women especially who want flat closures, because those are the most misunderstood women in this area of medicine. One that I know about right now is an organization called Not Putting on a Shirt, and you can find them on Instagram, and they have a website that I'll list below. But even more importantly, I want you to hear the story of the woman who started that organization. Her name is Kim, I believe, and she tells her story in a podcast that I will link below. And I really would love for you to listen to that story because it is outraging. And if you haven't yet had your surgery, it is something you should listen to, because her surgeon told her seconds before she went under anesthesia that he was going to disregard her very explicit instructions about what to do with her breast material and her skin. And she woke up from surgery with him having ignored her express and very clear instructions. And she went back to that hospital and protested over and over and over for months and years, and has been unsatisfied with the result. I believe that surgeon should be, absolutely taken out of medical practice. It makes me more afraid of male surgeons just hearing that story. I will never have a male surgeon anyway, but I'm so glad that I know that about myself, and hearing that story makes me more biased against men in the surgical profession especially. But important stories to hear, really ugly, really sad stories. But I just want to bring up the fact that medical fear and anxiety is very real and legitimate. And if you're experiencing it, you should not shush yourself or sweep that under your rug, because you're not alone. And it is really important that we reform this medical system that we are in, and inform it and make it better by speaking out and demanding the time that we deserve to get our answers to our questions. And if that means making medical professionals uncomfortable or angry or irritated, so be it. I think that it's important in the process of reform to make that discomfort as kind of a statement. And if we can band together and help each other to do that, all the more good will come of it. And so I'm a little ashamed to say that I'm not sure what I'll be able to have the courage to do tomorrow when I'm in that room with my very, very uptight and tense and anxious feeling surgeon that I just can barely even stand to be in a room with to begin with, but and very defensive. I can tell she's already defensive around me because of all the questions that I've asked, and I just make her uncomfortable. But here's hoping that I have the courage to tell her that I am not one of those people that likes the outcome that she's assuming that I wanted, and that I would have rather been more heard by her, and that I hope she's able to hear women like me more in the future. So I hope I don't give in to fear tomorrow. It's my last chance. I know on my next go round I'll be much more clear and I won't make any assumptions. I'll get everything in writing and I'll bring pictures to be extra, extra clear. But in order to kind of wrap this negative experience up well, I think that I will try my best to be very honest and also very kind, because I know that none of us is perfect and we all have biases and assumptions and presumptions in our lives and in our minds. And so I will go in with the spirit of forgiveness too, because I think that's an important example to set. So I'll talk more about fear in coming videos when fear of recurrence really does sink in. Right now I'm just reading about recurrence a lot, and the fear part hasn't fully taken a hold. But I wanted to talk about this emotion of fear that I have experienced so much. And before I close the chapter on my relationships with various surgeons, I really want to address it, and I want to improve it and fight against it more. So thanks for holding me accountable to do that by watching this video, and comment below if you have similar or opposite experiences. I want to hear the success stories because I know that they are out there. So share those with me too if you have excellent, very, very well listening surgeons in your life. And I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.